Is my hair okay?
Your hair looks fabulous.
I'm such a vain old bag.
Not at all.
Well, it's not that I want to remember. It's not like you have got a scab and then you scratch on it because it would bleed, but you can't forget it. It's not something that you wake up first thing in the morning and say, oh, let me think about the terrible thing that I lived through as a child. And many years, and I'm now, of course, in my age, you think that it has been a long time ago, but it is part of your life. And that follows you all the way, everywhere. You become a lot more cynical, a lot more angry, more understanding. And it changes you. It changes your whole outlook of life, of people. After the Holocaust, and if you have been part of it, it changes you inside. You might be more optimistic, more cynical. Some people turn to religion. Some people denied it because people say, where was God? But then again, where were the humans? So this is an egg and chicken question. I was born in Novi Sad, which is 2 hours from Belgrade. Now it's Serbia, but it's sort of part of Yugoslavia then. Sometimes the Hungarians occupied it, and sometimes the Austrians. And this is why most of the people who were born in that part of the world, born with 3 languages, they talk Serbian, German, and Hungarian. So for education, it was great. But in those days, religion was not such a big thing as it is today. People went to church because people were accepted, and we were quite non-religious. My mother was teaching ballet and arts in the Serbian Queen. Gosh, I forgot how you say dvor. Pardon?
Palace?
Yes, in the palace. And so I was with her, and as she was teaching, I learned also how to dance. By the age of 4, I was already dancing and, of course, singing. And I think I was 4 when I first sang in this place called Kalimegdan, which is a big, it is not as big as Hyde Park. And then I thought, yes, that's what I want to do. And by the age that I was 5, the war broke out. We woke up one morning and we heard this great big thunderstorm, which was not a thunderstorm at all. Belgrade was bombed, 4 o'clock in the morning. I think it was April the 5th, 1941, I believe. It sounds such a long time ago. And all I know is that we got out of bed, and all the flames came through the window, and it was smoke, and we just tried to get out of the room, out of the flat. But it was difficult because it was, I think, a block of flats with about 20, 30 residents, and we all tried to get out because the bomb hit our block of flats. And it was terrible because everybody was on the streets. It was like a stampede, except it was not buffaloes. It was human beings, and they were still all in nighties or pajamas. They were just running out of the burning houses. Nobody knew what happened. And I remember in Belgrade, we had these trams. And as we got out of the house, the trams were full of parts of people's bodies because the explosion, as people were running, they were throwing bombs down, so people exploded. And we had to go underneath those dripping with blood bodies. And every now and then, as the people were running, the planes would come down, and out of the window they would shoot with a machine gun the running people. And then those people who were running, when those machine guns, they heard they would throw each other on top of children to protect the children. And I remember my mother always telling me, whatever you do, don't let go of my hand. So I held on to her hand, and body to body, everybody was running. If you fell down, you couldn't, and if you did fall down, nobody would pick you up. And one of those occasions came again, that a plane came down and the machine gun, and I felt all these heavy people above me. And then when it was all quiet again, I couldn't get out. I just held on to somebody's hand. Eventually, my mother and some other people tried to free. The people on top of us were dead, but I was covered with this sweet, sticky thing on my face. I didn't know it was blood. All I knew it was sticky and very sweet. But the shock was that on the end of it, the hand that I was holding was not my mother's. It was a dead person's hand, who, in the commotion, I held on. But then again, I was saved by other people's bodies. And this is one of the pictures that I do remember. Many other things happened which you don't. So we escaped the bombing, and we went into the woods until it became a bit quiet. Most of the people went back to Belgrade, but because my mom and my grandmother, who we lived together, they were Hungarians, we decided to go to Hungary. In Hungary, it was still peace, because they made a pact with the Germans, but Yugoslavia and Serbia, they had war. So we got to Budapest, as my mother was teaching, and of course, it was a mother tongue. She got herself a job, and we got ourselves a little flat, and for the first few months, we tried to get, let's say, forget all the terrible thing that we have just come across. And one day, my mother and I went to a park, Budapest. Have you ever been? Full of beautiful parks. And it was lovely. We used to go to the park. We used to skip and sing and what mommy and daughters do. My mom was a very petite little woman. And then suddenly, this great big blonde woman comes from nowhere, approaches me, and I just didn't know. And she spat in my eye. And she said, "Bitte Žido," which means stinking Jew. I knew what stinking was. I had no idea what Jew meant. And all I know is my mother, usually she would have smacked her in the face because she was a very feisty, amazing woman, my mom. She just held onto my hand so strong that I thought she's going to break it. She wiped the spit off my eye, turned around, and we were marching towards home. But as we got out of the park, the world has changed. Whilst 1 minute it was this beautiful park walking, we approached outside of the park, and it was suddenly great big lorries full of great big placards on it saying these caricatures of Jewish people, these long noses counting the money, and the tannoys, these are the thieving, bloody Jews, and because of them you're going to lose all your jobs. Because of the stinking Jews, you will be homeless and you will starve. And one lorry after the other, and people shouting on the street, "Down with the Jews, down with the Jews." And they were throwing stones at the shop windows. And suddenly you thought, I am Jewish. Where does it show? What do I do? And people were looking out, who shall we lynch? But we were lucky because we looked very average, if you like. So my first port of call was for my mother to go into a jewelry shop, and she bought 3 crosses, one for her, one for me, and for my grandma. This was the cross that she wore always. And when she died, I had it. And my cross was much smaller than hers, and I was a little bit jealous because I thought, why would my mother have such a big cross and I had only a little one? But that saved our lives quite often. My grandmother was very worried because she was Jewish. She was very Jewish. that it would burn her skin, because having a cross on this Jewish skin of hers, neither my mother or I understood that, and she would put a handkerchief underneath it to make sure it didn't burn the stigmata into her. And yeah, she was a very amazing old lady, because on Friday evenings, we didn't have any candles or anything. So she had some matches, a little matchbox, and made 2 holes in it. And then she lit the candle and the matches, and she would put her hand on my head, and she would say, "I blessed you like your ancestors, Rachel, Rebecca, and Leah." And she mumbled something, and I had no idea. And I thought, oh, maybe that is being Jewish. I didn't know what she was doing, and she was doing it forever, ever since I could remember. But it was just like kissing me goodnight. It was just, I didn't know what it meant. And then, of course, my mother told me, and we had a little powwow, that under no circumstances anybody going to ever know that we are Jewish. And I said, but are we Jewish? She said, it doesn't really matter what you are, we are human. And whatever you are, you should be very proud of it. I said, but why did that lady spit at me? Or she doesn't understand. And not everybody is like this. I had to take it, because I can't start and argue with my mother at that age, although I was quite good at arguing always. And then also she decided that she stopped becoming a teacher and went out and bought herself a nurse's uniform. So she reinvented her. She invented herself and had this great big thing on it with a red cross. And I became her little patient. Because from that moment on, Hungary has changed. People were searched on the streets for papers. Many of them were, of course, they have SS uniforms on, but equally as many private people, the so-called fifth columnists or agents provocateurs, civilian husband and wife, you looked at them, but they were not, they would stop you, and if you had papers to prove, fine. If you were not having any papers, then they would all shoot you on the spot or put you in one of those green vans. And everybody had to wear this yellow Star of David. Actually, this is the book that I have written, Yellow Star like this. Everybody had to wear that, which said Jude. It says Jew. And that is not exactly very dignified either. They started to dehumanize people. And at a very early age, I felt terribly bad and embarrassed, because I saw old gentlemen dressed all in black, and youngsters, and everybody went there and spat at them. How has anybody got the right to go and spit at somebody? Or they would kick them and call them, oh, bloody stinking, and other words as well, which then I didn't know what they meant, but I used them as well, and my mom said, you mustn't use that word. And it became so chaotic. So we didn't want to stay in the flat, because it would be, people were, every day somebody was knocking on the doors to see who is there. And if you were not at work, it was becoming suspicious. At that moment, it was such a chaos that people were afraid of each other. People were afraid to be, if they're kind to you, then they would think, oh, they're sympathizers, because everybody was watching everybody else. I mean, you were worried what you would speak in your dreams, in your sleep, because it became like you were afraid of your own shadow. You never knew who is Jewish anymore. You never knew who is not Jewish. You never knew who is an SS. You just didn't know. You just couldn't trust your own family practically, because they used to be, in schools, the kids used to be paid, and whatever, if you hear your parents speaking about politics or about Jews, let us know. The kids did it because they didn't know any better. It was just so unbelievable what happened. But it happened almost overnight, you see. And then my mother would put a bandage around my face. Sometimes she would suck out a little bit of blood off her fingers, dab the bandage with a bit of blood, and she would have the uniform, and then we would walk the streets. And if anybody would stop us, she would say, please take our papers. We didn't have any papers, but she just waved something there. I have to take this child to the nearest hospital because she just had an accident. And they waved us on, and yes, yes, yes. And this is how we walked the streets, and we had to mingle with people. We would mostly spend our time in railway stations, bus stations, big shops, so that you are not singled out. And you couldn't take with you any suitcases because only the immigrants or the people on the run would have suitcases, because why would you want to have everything with you? And every day there were air raids, and people were picked up. Because my grandmother was Hungarian and she wore this black, the peasants used to wear black scarves and outfits, and she didn't look Jewish. I mean, I don't know how you look Jewish, but not everybody has got a big nose and looks like that. There are some Jewish people who look like the cousin of the Pope of Rome. So we spend the time like that, being totally frightened. And as I say, witnessing these people, they had to sweep roads. The Jewish people were not allowed to walk on the street. They had to walk where the cars were. No Jews and dogs in the shops. That is dehumanizing, as if they wouldn't be human. And many of them were, the catastrophe of it is that there were ordinary people doing it to ordinary people. It was not that it was something very special. The next door neighbor, your mother could have been the teacher, your father was the dentist. They lived in the same community, they went to school together. And then overnight, they became persona non grata, who do not deserve. And of course, they went and took people's homes away, and they had to leave everything. They would come, and he says, you got 20 minutes to pack everything. And they would be put into this Jew houses, they called them, and they had big Star of David on it. And then my mother, because she was in the nurse's uniform, people took it for granted that she is a nurse. So every time there was this explosion or air raid thing, she would have to help. In the beginning, she just put plasters on, but later on she had to go and work in a hospital. And she decided to rent a room so that I could have a week food, because we didn't have any food, because we didn't have any coupons, because we were not legitimately there. So we had, with my grandmother, we used to go and scavenge food from hospital dustbins and dustbins from hotels and places like this. But that's also not very dignifying. We only took potato peelings and fruit, vegetables, because meat, by the time it gets to the dustbin, it pongs, it stinks, so we didn't do that. At night, at 12 o'clock, we started to queue in front of a baker shop. So at 4 o'clock, we should have a loaf of bread. And we didn't have anything. I mean, we basically lived off hand-me-downs if we found any. The different consulates, like the Yugoslav consulate and the Swiss consulate, and all the Italian consulates, they were always at the door. You could go there and they would give you something. And the Yugoslav consulate, we could hide there. They had a room there, which on the outside they pretended it was a storeroom, but behind there were Jewish people hidden. So the SS couldn't come through the door, nilly-willy, or willy-nilly. They had to, that was, the Serbian consulate was Serbia. The Swiss consul, that was their domain, so they were not allowed to come and search. Later on, they took no notice of it, they did. But this is how many people hid in the consulates. So the Swiss consulate helped a lot, because my mother got together with another, my mother worked for the underground, and she had this nurse's uniform, and they had these minibuses with Red Cross on it, you know, International Red Cross. And he had a white overall on with a stethoscope, and they went into the ghettos and would take out children. and we had a Swiss flag on the van, on the little mini bus, and the two of them would say, "This is the Swiss consul, we are taking out the youngest children," and so on, until they became wise and found out that they were, my mother and this young man, they must have saved hundreds of kids. And I was always with them because I was the kid that they already saved. So it looked the right props. So it was very well staged. But they have each time put their life online. And the underground did some amazing things. You know, my father, of course, and my uncle, they were straight away in the beginning of the war taken to forced labor camps. And my father, he was an architect. And actually, he was the first jazz musician in Serbia. That's where I got my love for jazz. And they took him to Siberia. And by the time that he was 28 or 29, he was there for 4 years hacking stones in that cold, starved, and he died there. So I never met my father after that anymore. But his spirit is in me. And so my mother rented this place. And in the beginning, this woman, because she just wanted me out of the danger. And she said that she's a nurse and she has got lots of night duties. Would she look after me? And blah, blah, blah. Oh, she said, what a lovely little girl you are, beautiful green eyes. And my mom said, she's okay, you don't have to look after her. Give her a pencil and paper, coloring, and she will be there fine. She even brought me in a biscuit, and I thought, wow, I haven't had a biscuit for years. And about 2 days later, the doors opened wide, and two tallest leather-dressed men came in with great big SS here, and she was not a lovely little lady, and I was not anymore the beautiful blue-eyed little girlie. She said, this is a stinking Jew. Get rid of her, she said. She is contaminating the air here. She is hiding. I am not stupid. I know a Jew when I see a Jew. So, and I looked at myself. I was only 6 years old at the time, 6.5. And these 6 foot, God knows long people, without a word, they just picked me up, took me with them. Mind you, I had a ride in this beautiful big limousine. I never rode a limousine, but the reason was wrong, you see. And then they drove and they arrived at this great big house. And I later on found out it is a pre-concentration camp. And they walked me up those stairs and they asked me, where is my mom and where is my dad? And I didn't say a word because I didn't want them to think that I have a mom and dad. I pretended I was an orphan. I was so petrified, but I was still quick up to that. And they opened this great big door and shoved me in. And in this great big door, there were about 250 or 300 adult people. And as the door opened, they just stood and looked at me. I suppose I felt like in a zoo because I was the only child there. But they didn't know where to put me. They had a call, there is a stinking Jew there. So it was their duty to go and pick the stinking Jew up, me. I didn't stink, actually. I was very clean little girl. Anyway, and so I spent the time there. I was asked by the SS and by soldiers and about my mother, about the names, and I just pretended I didn't know what they're talking about. And I was there for about 3 months. And then one day this chappie came in overalls and asked me, would I like to see my mother again? And I just thought, well, oh, he's another spy and wants to find out about me. He said, if you do exactly what I tell you, you will see your mother again. By that time, I had been about 3 or 4 months without my mom at the age of 6.5, 7. That's a hell of a long time. And I just didn't know whether I'd ever see her again. And I didn't want to cry because I didn't want anybody to see that I was frightened. I cried at night, but nobody could see me. And I discovered a little cocoon at a very early age. And I sang. I invented little songs. And during the rest of the war, when I was hungry or I was afraid or I was petrified, I was in this little created cocoon, as if I was untouchable in that cocoon. It was a little game. I didn't know who Walter Mitty was at that time, but I suppose I invented Walter Mitty at that time. I was the first of them. Anyway, one day, so I did exactly what this chap said to me: tonight when the lights go out, go into that little room, tell them that you have to go to the toilet, the guards, and there's a little room 2 doors away from the guards. And that is a coal cellar, and you must hide there and wait until somebody knocks. And that was true. I went, opened the door, and there was this big, big mountain of coal. And I climbed behind it, and behind that coal, there was a blanket and an apple. I haven't seen an apple for you. And I ate the apple and waited and waited. I even had a clock, a watch, and anything. And eventually, and I thought, maybe I'm going to die here. But death was not really, I saw so many people dead, but I didn't know they were dead. They just didn't move anymore. How do you know with that age what death is really? You don't, and ignorance is really a blessing. I suffered later on when I understood what was happening. But at the time, I didn't know what was happening. So somebody knocked on the door, and as they opened the door, there was this great big linen basket, stinking, full of ammonia. I found out later that next to this pre-concentration camp building was an infirmary. And in this infirmary, they had people that were too old, too ill, and they didn't feed them. They put them in a bed, and they had to pee and poo and just die. And every week, they would collect the sheets, and they would burn them. Most of them died within about 10 days, but they didn't give them clean sheets. It was saturated with urine and everything. That's what they put into the linen basket. And the guard said to me, made a hole like this. He said, get in there, hide, and don't move, because when we go through the gates, they mustn't find that you are there. Otherwise, they will shoot you. So by that time, I was blinded by the urine and the ammonia. I was choking, but I was not allowed to cough. And yes, as we went out the gates, they were poking with the bayonet, and it missed me. And I could hear how hee-ho, hee-ho, we were put on top of a waiting lorry. And I could also hear that I was not the only one that there was not only one basket. There must have been 20, 30 baskets like this. And then the lorry took off, and it was shaking. And when the lorry was there, I opened a little bit so I could get up. And then after about 10 minutes, I saw the lorry stopped. And the lorry driver came in and fished me out from that linen basket full of excrements. By that time, I was coughing, I couldn't see, and I must have stunk like mad. And he hugged me, very brave man. And he said, well, you are the bravest little girl I have ever met in my life. And he put me down. It was in the middle of nowhere. And there was a little shadow there waiting, and it was my mum. So she smuggled me out with money and with her underground connections out of this place. And to this very day, I cannot explain to you how it felt. We were both crying. We were kissing each other. We were hugging each other. We were hopping up and down like some mad people. I don't know how long it lasted, but I get even now goosebumps when I talk about it. And the last thing that I heard the driver say to my mom, don't go back to Budapest, because they're looking out for you too. So take the first train and go wherever you want to. When we went with the first train into Pécs, within about first 3 days, my mom was picked up, but this time not because we were Jewish. This time, and as we arrived to Page, there were thousands of people on the floor, dead people that never removed them, because the day before they picked up all the Jews and shot them and left them on the streets. And as we arrived, we could see these people. So my mom was picked up, but this time not because she was Jewish, because she was working for the underground, because she was working for the underground. And we were taken to this room, which was all like quilt. I didn't know what that was. And there was a chair with a light there. And my mother was put to sit there. And there was this soldier there with more medals than I have, of course. And he was writing and writing. And this man never took his head up. And I saw a photo frame on his desk. And I went up to it and I said, are these your children? He looked at me. Yes, he says, my twin daughters. They must be the same age as you are. Oh. And I looked him in the eye. I said, are you going to hurt my mummy? And this man gets up, slams the door, the table. And I thought, he's going to kill me. You know, I was just so frightened. And she said, Scheiße, which means shit. I can't do this anymore. He says, beckoned my mother out. He was the inquisitor. He was one of the top SS inquisitors. And the inquisitors usually use matches to put under people's nails and stuff like this. This is terrible things they do. She beckoned my mom's name out of there and she said, not all of us are Schweinehunde. Not all of us are bad people, he says. Not all of us enjoy what we are doing, he says. We are going through terrible, terrible times, he says. And I, for one, I just can't do this anymore, he says. I just have seen things, I just can't do this anymore. He says, come with me. So he took us down, and on the corridor, every soldier who saw him went, Heil Hitler. He just went like this. But he, as I said, he must have been a top banana there, because with he was a top inquisitors. And he took us down to the main gate. He took all his money out of his wallet and gave it to my mother. He says, I can just apologize. I just can't do this anymore. He says, your daughter, she's your guardian angel. And I looked at her and she reminded me of my own children. How can anybody? He said, this is just not right. I can't do this anymore. And she says, take the first train and go. And this is where I have realized, perhaps later on, I don't know what happened to that man. Probably they shot him, probably they shot his children. Every human, every life thing deserves respect. And I have had the privilege that after I have written my book, I'm going to show it to you just in case. So from yellow star to pop star, because I had to wear the yellow star, and later on I became a pop star in order to survive. And then I came to England, but you have to read it in the book. I got involved with public speaking, with head organization, Holocaust Educational Trust. And I'm talking in schools and colleges and events about the Holocaust and how I survived it. Because you read it in books, but it's not the same. And there are many more Holocaust survivors like myself who have dedicated their lives and their time, what's left for us. We are becoming lesser and lesser. I hope this is not my last speech. And they are going to schools and they're passing on the message. And when you hear somebody who has gone through the concentration camp and lost everything and has been dehumanized, death, you kill somebody, it's bad, nobody has the right for it. But these people were shaved, these people had to take their clothes off, these people were raped. They were put into places they were not treated like humans. Even cattle are treated with more dignity. And not much has changed if you look at it. Look at the people in China, the Uyghurs. They are selling their body parts without asking them. How has anybody got the right to take your liver or your kidney out for a few pounds? It is horrible, and it is happening all over the place. People have just got upon themselves, taken upon themselves that they have got a right to hate and to kill others. And that's wrong, because life is for living, and we are all equal, whether you are a person of color, whether you are Christian, Jew, or if you cut your skin, the same color blood comes out. And it is just so wrong, because we are destroying each other. We are destroying ourselves. And what then? What then? Where do we go from here? People are just standing by, and if this horrible thing, for instance, happens in Yemen, let's say, it's over there. I never met a Yemeni. What the hell should I care? But you should care, because today is Yemen, tomorrow it's England, France, everywhere. Look at Israel. They found a little niche of land, and nobody wants them to stay there. Everybody, all right. If the Jews during the Holocaust, they would have stood up for themselves, not all of them would have been killed, but they had this ghetto mentality, and they were grateful to be able to breathe the same air as the Gentiles did. The world shouldn't be like this. You have got the same right to breathe the air. So I go to schools, and I'm invited, and I find it a big honor and a privilege. And I'm just trying to explain to them that it is wonderful, because most schools are very multicultural. I love it, because it's wonderful, because the world really is a great big melting pot. And that's how it should be. And I'm not giving them the lesson of history, because they get it from the teacher. I just want to show them that I am an ordinary person, and we are all ordinary human beings, but it can happen to us, and it's happening to us, and how we have to stop it, and we mustn't let it happen. We have to stand up and be counted, because every human, every life matters. And the young people should really learn it at a very earlier age, to tolerate each other. And just because you are different, it doesn't mean that you have to hate them. Learn about them. If you learn about them, you will find out that you have got much more in common than not. We all strive for the same thing. We all strive to have a good life. We all have more than we really need. But we have got this greed to want more and more and more and more. But we can't guarantee how life is turning out. So the young people must today change it. They must change themselves. They should not accept it because the parents make a mistake. They should do it better. They should try to see, how would I be if I would be in that person's shoe? How would I be if I was homeless? How would I be if I didn't have any food or any clothes? How would I feel? It's all right to say, oh, poor person, oh, I'm really so sorry, and goes home, has a 3-course meal, watch television, and nothing happened. Do something about it. So, and also that people who learn about hatred and anti-Semitism should be educated earlier. Because a baby is not born with hate. When a baby is born, you can put it in a cot, you could put a baby of color, you can put a baby, white baby, you could put an oriental baby, doesn't matter what shade it is, they are not going to hate each other. They poo, they pee, they eat, they smile, they puke, they are the same. But by the time they are 3 years old, they don't like each other. Where does it come from? And that's wrong. So they had to teach them younger and younger. I think by the time they go to a kindergarten, they should be taught that everybody is the same. Well, I wrote this little story, which I hope that would be shown in every preschool, and started at the age of 6 or 7 as a little tale about a striped kite and a little boy called Zach, who has been taken to concentration camp with the parents. He came home from school and he saw the Nazis taking his mom and dad and grandma and sister to this, poking with the bayonets, the soldiers putting them in a lorry. And he was just coming home from school with his school friends, and his neighbors and everybody else was just standing there, and not one of them would say, "Hey, why are you taking these people away?" He was just really surprised. Why are they doing that? And then he ran, of course, to his mom and dad, and they took him as well to the concentration camp. And then in that concentration camp, of course, he built a little kite because they were waiting to be killed, and he befriends a 17-year-old young camp warden who didn't look at him like a Jewish little boy. He just liked the kite, and they went out one day. He smuggled him out of the camp to fly the kite together. And they spent the whole afternoon, and there was no difference that was a little SS camp warden, and that was a little Jewish boy. They just loved that kite that was made out of newspapers and things. And then the evening came and they had to reel back the kite. And they were both suddenly, without saying a word, they knew that they're going back to a place that is fatal for both of them in this case. So they let the kite fly. And they saw it going up and up into a little spot in the sky, and they understood basically if one of them is at least free. And then Herman the German, I thought the name was and his name was Zach, the little Jewish boy. And the camp guard, he was called Herman the German. It was time for them to go back and smuggle him back into the camp. And halfway through there was this road sign, wooden road sign, which said Camp Village. And Herman stopped the little jeep, and he had to decide in himself what is he going to do. If he goes back to the camp, it's inevitable that the little boy will be taken to the gas chamber, because that's what they do in that camp. And he would be probably shot, because if they catch him that he smuggled out a little Jew, it is unforgivable. And the option is, of course, for both of them, now that he's got a jeep, to escape into the village and do whatever fate gives them, because he himself could not understand. Whilst he was just a camp warden or whatever, I don't think he even thought what is going on, because he never had the close contact, but he befriended that little boy. The fact that he was Jewish didn't come into it. So at that crossroads, he stopped. And I left the story open because I want the readers to write to it. Would they drive back? Would Herman the German drive Zach back to the camp and see what the consequences are? Or would he have the guts, or should he, escape to the village and see what the future brings? So this is up to the reader to write the finale to it. And I hope that this book would have been published all over America, England, France, Israel, and that the kids would have it as the educational aid. Because my second book would then be Zach and Mohammed, how he meets another little boy in school who is Muslim, and both of them are being bullied. People bully. Today, even I go to schools and the teacher would come to me, could you address bullying today? Or could you address homosexuality? Or could you address this? So I always, and I'm very outspoken, I swear like a trooper as well. That's why they all love me. And I believe that educating at a very early age is paramount. Because just as you educate kids to hate each other and to teach them how the other people is different and it's wrong, you should teach the children as soon as they understand that they are all the same. And it hurts when you cut yourself and you're sad, and if you get kissed and loved, it is nice and everybody likes that. And we don't have the right to take even a fly's life away because we didn't give the life. How can you take something away that you haven't given to somebody? Nobody has the right for that. And I know that I am more on the way out than on the way in, but as long as I have got a breath in my body, I have got this urge to talk to just as many people as I can and tell them, look, here I am. I have gone through this, and I have learned that there are good people around. Be one of them. Stand up for it. Because one day it might be your turn. I know what hunger was, and even when I became a very well-known singer in Germany, which is of course quite a macabre that in Germany, out of all people, they would make me into the star. And I was on stage and I enjoyed it very, very much. But I always remembered and appreciated how lucky I was. And it was wonderful. People paid me for something I loved doing. They didn't know that I would have sung for nothing. But so here I am, and I'm trying my little input. It is very important. Dignity, every person has to have a dignity. We all have got our line, which we would not want to have crossed. But in need, when you're hungry, when you have no home, no roof over your head, it is very, very difficult to maintain the dignity. It is not very dignified to have to beg for food. But sometimes you don't have choice. And people should never put anybody else into that position to take the dignity away. We don't need to have all these people who are homeless. Sometimes I hear this absolutely idiotic reply, but they like it like that. I said, maybe they like the fresh air, and maybe for a few weeks, but they don't like forever and ever. What do you mean? You try it. The excuse is, well, they like it. They shut their eyes. And it is so wrong. I mean, people have got so much. And the dignity, how you live, is so important. And if people are putting you into concentration camps and this genocide, and they treat you like, it's a horrible thing to say, like animals. Animals don't treat each other like that. It is only humanity who seems to have some kind of a sadistic joy out of imprisoning or killing or torturing people. It is just sort of, I think it's a nasty human trend, and at times I'm almost ashamed of counting myself being human. But I do hope that sometimes people would realize, and the time is now, help each other maintain the dignity, keep your own dignity. Don't take something away from people which you cannot replace. Live and let live. And put yourself in the position how you would feel if it happens to your family. Have understanding, don't be a bystander. Make sure that you're doing your bit to deserve to be called human. Because that should be a very special, not price, but it should be a very privilege to say, you are a human. I hope in Yiddish, they have got this expression they call Mensch. Mensch in German is human, a person. And if somebody is especially nice, good person, they call it, he is a real Mensch. And I would like on my grave to say, she was a Mensch. That would be a good thing to do.
Just tell us.
I had a very interesting interview with such a good-looking man. I blushed because he's so much younger, but if somebody's good-looking, doesn't matter how old they are. Majid, He's on LBC.
Oh, yes, yes.
And before we had the interview, he said to me, he said, before, no, we are not on air anymore yet. But I want to thank you as a Jewish woman, that you are standing up for the Muslim people. I said, I have to stop you then and there. I'm not doing it as a Jewish woman, and I'm not doing it because Muslim or no Muslim. I'm doing it as one human to another human, where I find that nobody has the right to persecute anybody else. The fact that I'm Jewish, that's by the by. The fact that you lot are Muslims, that's also by the by. But it's an incredible injustice done, and I can't be a bystander. Oh, he said, you have no idea how many Muslim friends you have suddenly. I said, lovely. And I have got some wonderful, wonderful audiences, and the kids are really, really into it, and they understand and they ask questions. And I mean, I know it's nothing to do with it anymore. I came to a school somewhere in middle of Sussex somewhere, and a 12-year-old young boy stood at the door and looked at me top to toe. And I said, darling, are you okay? Why are you looking at me? Oh, she said, sorry, miss, I have never seen a Jew. And that was so sweet in a way, because what did he think? I'm going to be like this? Am I going to have trunks? Am I going to... I said, am I different? No, he says. But he was so genuine about it, because they were talking about the Holocaust and the Jews and this, as if we would have been some kind of dinosaurs or somebody else. We are not. We are all the same. I can sit in a room is full of people of color. I wouldn't see myself a different color, and I wouldn't see that they are different color. It's not that I'm colorblind, but to me, I don't see that. I'm not just saying that. I genuinely don't see that. I'm not better than anybody else, but I just see people for what they are. And I hope others could do that. Human dignity to me is, we all have certain ideas about who we are. Our limits are different. Our expectations of life, ourselves, is different. But the dignity is to be treated that you would like to be treated yourself. Don't make me kiss your shoes or lick your shoes. Don't make me eat mud because it will make you feel better. Don't kill my family. Don't take things away from me that are mine, not yours. Treat me like you want to be treated. And that's all I could say, because that is, I think, it must be a dignity. You have to be feeling in yourself, yes, I am a human being. And a human being should be basically the top of the animal kingdom. But unfortunately, we are not. We are failing. We are failing. Because we are killing out of joy. We are treating other people to make us feel bigger and better. That's terrible. And we don't even realizing it. And that's why the young people should realize it at a very, very early age. If I only had the chance to speak to every kindergarten, to every school, to every nation, everywhere. If I only had the possibility and the time yet to talk and just tell people, hey, wake up. We don't have time, it is now. Even the nature, look what is happening. Even the nature is shouting. And we are just oh yes, global warming. We are all destroying ourselves and each other. I wish I could have the answer. But all I know, and I hope that in my small little way, I could help few people to understand that it is each and one of us our responsibility to help each other.